Have you ever had everything in place, your job, your relationships, your routine, and yet something still feels off, like there's a quiet discomfort beneath the surface, but you can't quite name it? What if the reason for your unhappiness isn't in your job, your partner, or your circumstances, but in the hidden habits of your mind? In this video, we're going to break down 5 invisible roots that feed your unhappiness. These are not just psychological theories. They come from ancient Stoic wisdom, grounded in both philosophy and modern cognitive science. If you're serious about understanding yourself, taking control of your inner world, and building real peace from the inside out, this is for you. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and join a community that's committed to clarity, growth, and inner power. Let's get started. 1. Misaligned expectations, the source of emotional turmoil. We all carry a script in our minds, a story of how life should unfold. People should treat us with respect. Our plans should go smoothly. We should always feel confident. These assumptions are so ingrained that we rarely notice them. They live in the background of our thoughts, shaping how we interpret every experience. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we don't just feel surprised, we feel offended. Why? Because they violated an unspoken rule we hold, that others should be courteous. When a project fails or someone criticizes us, we react with frustration or hurt, not necessarily because of the event, but because it didn't fit the narrative we've constructed for how things are supposed to go. But when reality doesn't follow our mental script, we suffer, not because of the events themselves, but because our expectations were never aligned with life's nature. This is the invisible engine behind much of our emotional distress. Life throws curveballs, illness, betrayal, loss, delays. Yet we cling to the idea that things should be otherwise, that pain is unfair, that people should behave differently. These shoulds and musts are not observations, they're demands. And every time life fails to meet them, we experience internal conflict. The Stoics understood this dynamic well. They didn't see suffering as something life did to us, but something that arises when we resist what is. Stoicism teaches us that much of our emotional pain comes not from the world, but from the gap between what we expect and what actually happens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoics trained themselves to see events as neutral, neither good nor bad. What makes them hurtful or joyous is the meaning we attach to them. So when we feel rejected, ignored, or disappointed, the pain isn't inherently in the event, it's in the meaning we've layered on top of it. And at the root of that meaning, more often than not, is a mismatched expectation. If we don't recalibrate these expectations, we set ourselves up for constant disappointment. The world won't adjust to us. We must adjust our lens to see the world clearly. This doesn't mean giving up hope or settling for less. It means engaging with reality as it is, not as we fantasize it should be. We must learn to hold our plans lightly, to expect adversity, and to stop assuming that life owes us ease or fairness. When you begin to accept that hardship is part of the human condition, not an interruption of it, emotional resilience follows. This shift in perception is what the Stoics called living in accordance with nature. It's not passive, it's powerful. It liberates us from illusion and anchors us in clarity. 2. Attachment to outcomes, chasing control where it doesn't exist. We're taught to set goals, push hard, and measure ourselves by results. From an early age, we're conditioned to believe that success equals worth. Awards, accolades, promotions, these become the milestones by which we judge our lives. But there's a hidden cost to this mentality. When our sense of self depends entirely on outcomes, we hand over our power. If we succeed, we feel elated. If we fail, we feel worthless. The highs are thrilling, but the lows can be devastating. This roller coaster isn't sustainable. It's not freedom. It's a dependence disguised as ambition. Whether it's a promotion, a relationship, or a reputation, we start believing that happiness is something out there, just one achievement away. The problem is that finish line keeps moving. Once we reach a goal, another takes its place. And so we chase, we hustle, we grasp. But fulfillment remains elusive because it's always tied to something uncertain, something outside of us. This attachment to outcomes is a subtle form of bondage. We think we're striving for excellence, but often we're just feeding an inner void, a void that no outcome can truly fill. Stoicism flips that script. It reminds us that outcomes aren't truly ours. Our actions, our effort, our decisions, those are within our control. The results, never guaranteed. Epictetus famously said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This doesn't mean you shouldn't set goals or work hard. It means you shift your focus from what you can't control to what you can. You pour yourself into the process, not because of what it might get you, but because it reflects who you are. You act with integrity, not because it ensures reward, but because it aligns with your principles. When we internalize this, we stop living like gamblers chasing luck and start living like craftsmen refining what we can shape. Imagine approaching life like an artisan, not obsessed with fame or fortune, but with the quality of your work. Your measure of success becomes internal. Did I show up fully? Did I act with courage, patience, honesty? The rest, recognition, reward, reciprocation, is noise. This mindset builds resilience because it grounds your peace in something stable. When storms come, and they will, you won't be thrown off course. You'll have already made peace with the fact that outcomes may vary, but your character doesn't have to. 3. The trap of external validation. How much of your self-worth is built on what others think of you? Be honest. Most of us want to be seen, appreciated, praised. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's human. But when your identity is built on applause, you live at the mercy of other people's opinions. Their praise uplifts you, but their criticism crushes you. You become like a boat tossed by the waves, always reacting, never grounded. And the worst part, you may lose sight of who you really are because you're always trying to be who others want you to be. When we rely on external approval, we give strangers the keys to our emotional home. One harsh word can break us. One like or comment becomes our self-esteem. In the digital age, this is more dangerous than ever. We curate lives for public consumption, and in return, we wait for likes to affirm our worth. But Stoicism reminds us, this is a fragile way to live. If your peace depends on external noise, you'll never be at peace. Opinions are fleeting, fickle, and often uninformed. Should we really let them define us? Stoic wisdom teaches that opinions are like the wind, constantly shifting, never solid. Building your identity on them is like building a house on sand. Marcus Aurelius warned against wasting energy on what others say or do. He urged self-reflection over social performance. "It never ceases to amaze me," he wrote. "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The goal isn't to become indifferent or arrogant. It's to build a stable sense of self that doesn't require constant reassurance from outside sources. True confidence comes when you root your value in character, not applause. It's not about arrogance, it's about independence, a kind of emotional sovereignty. When you live by your values, honesty, kindness, discipline, you become immune to flattery and criticism alike. Praise doesn't inflate you. Insults don't deflate you. You remain steady. This doesn't mean shutting yourself off from feedback, but learning to filter it through discernment. Ask, Is this criticism helpful or just noise? Is this praise genuine or manipulation? The more you know yourself, the less power others have over you. That is the essence of inner freedom. 4. Unexamined reactions, the mind on autopilot. Have you ever snapped at someone, then asked yourself later, why did I react like that? Maybe it was a colleague who made a harmless comment, a friend who didn't text back in time, or a partner who didn't notice your mood. In the moment, your reaction felt justified, righteous even. But hours later, regret set in. You replay the scene in your mind, not just to understand what they did, but what you did. That's the doorway into deeper awareness. The human mind is often driven by forces we don't immediately see: memories, anxieties, unresolved wounds, expectations. So when we react without pausing, we're not responding to reality, we're responding to a pattern. And those patterns, once set in motion, have a way of pulling us into cycles we never intended. One snap leads to a misunderstanding, which leads to tension, which becomes a story we tell ourselves. They don't respect me, or I always get ignored. All of that from a single automatic reaction. That's what happens when emotions rule before reflection steps in. Without awareness, our responses become automatic, echoes of old wounds, fears, or assumptions. Picture the mind like a glass of muddy water that's constantly shaken. Unless we allow it to settle, the sediment never drops and we never get clarity. Our emotional reactions often don't belong to the present moment. They come from the past, childhood messages about safety, experiences of betrayal, social conditioning that told us what is acceptable or not. A raised voice can instantly take someone back to a parent's anger. A missed message might trigger memories of abandonment. We react not to what is, but to what it reminds us of. Stoic philosophy calls this the tyranny of passion, where emotions overwhelm reason and clarity. In this state, we surrender control. We hand the steering wheel to fear, pride, insecurity, or anger. And most of the time, we don't even realize it. Stoicism offers a practical solution: self-examination. Through journaling, stillness, or even mental rehearsal, we start to notice the trigger before it fires. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself daily, not because he had all the answers, but because he knew the danger of going through life unexamined. Journaling isn't about creating a record, it's about pausing long enough to see. When you write down, "Today I got angry when they corrected me," you're not just recording a moment, you're catching yourself in a habit. Mental rehearsal is another tool, playing out scenarios in your mind before they happen. If my colleague challenges me tomorrow, I will remain calm and ask questions. This is the ancient practice of premeditatio malorum, rehearsing adversity so that we don't default to panic or rage. And then there's stillness, the quiet time, where we do nothing but sit with ourselves, watching our thoughts rise and fall like waves. This silence is where recognition begins. When we bring our reactions into the light, we take back the wheel from the subconscious and learn to choose our responses instead of being ruled by them. Viktor Frankl, a man who endured unspeakable suffering in a concentration camp, wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." That space is what Stoicism helps us reclaim. It's not about becoming emotionless, it's about not being led by emotion. It's the difference between anger rising in your chest and choosing not to let it shape your behavior. It's the strength to feel without being swallowed. Ultimately, mastering your reactions is an act of liberation. You are no longer a puppet of your past or a prisoner of your impulses. You become someone who acts with intention, someone whose power comes not from dominance, but from self-possession. And in a world of chaos and noise, that kind of inner calm is a quiet revolution. 5. Emotional confusion, mistaking feelings for facts. Here's a truth most never learn. Not every feeling is a fact, but feelings feel so real that we rarely question them. We say, "I feel abandoned," and assume someone has actually abandoned us. We feel insulted and conclude the other person must have intended to hurt us. But this is where pain compounds, when we confuse inner storms with outer truths. The Stoics were brutally honest about this. They believed that our suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. Just because you feel offended doesn't mean someone was offensive. Just because you feel anxious doesn't mean something terrible is actually happening. Feelings are signals. They tell us something might need our attention, but they are not verdicts. And unless we learn to challenge our feelings, we end up building entire belief systems on emotional quicksand. The Stoics made a powerful distinction between impressions, what we perceive, and passions, what we feel about those perceptions. When we mix the two, we suffer. Epictetus used the metaphor of a judge. Life presents you with impressions, stimuli, events, words, expressions. You are the judge, not the defendant. You get to evaluate, not automatically react. But when the judge is lazy or asleep, feelings rush in and take over the courtroom. A cold glance becomes rejection. A silence becomes condemnation. A mistake becomes a prophecy of failure. Passions are not wrong in themselves, but when left unexamined, they distort. They warp reality and hijack our reasoning. This is why the Stoics trained daily, not to suppress emotions, but to separate them from perception. Just as a skilled archer doesn't panic at the sight of wind, a Stoic doesn't assume every emotional gust is a hurricane. A flight delay becomes a disaster. A rejection becomes proof of unworthiness. But these aren't objective truths. They're interpretations, and we can challenge them. Cognitive behavioral therapy, deeply influenced by Stoicism, uses a similar framework. Catch the thought, examine the evidence, reframe the belief. Is this flight delay truly catastrophic, or just inconvenient? Does this person's rejection mean I have no value, or that we're simply not compatible? The mind loves shortcuts, and the emotional brain moves faster than the logical one. That's why training is essential. You don't wait until you're drowning to learn how to swim. Likewise, you don't wait for an emotional crisis to start examining your thoughts. Make it a habit. At the end of each day, ask, what did I feel strongly about? Why did I feel that way? Was there another way to see the situation? This doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. By separating the event from our judgment of it, we reclaim emotional clarity. This isn't repression, it's rational sorting. It's how we move from chaos to control. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. That suffering comes from giving our feelings too much authority. When you feel anxious, you don't have to obey the feeling. You can ask, is this feeling based on fact or fear? That simple question can interrupt the spiral. It gives you space to breathe, space to reassess. And that's where your power lives, not in always being calm, but in not being captured by every emotional wave. The Stoics weren't detached robots. They loved, they grieved, they failed. But they didn't drown in those moments because they trained their minds to see clearly. In a world that tells us to follow your heart, Stoicism offers a wiser path. Listen to your heart, but don't let it be the only voice in the room. So many of us chase peace, not realizing we're the ones planting the seeds of chaos inside ourselves. The 5 hidden roots, misaligned expectations, attachment to outcomes, external validation, automatic reactions, and emotional confusion are subtle, but they shape everything. But here's the good news. You can change this, not by escaping life, but by engaging it with wisdom. Stoic tools like the dichotomy of control, premeditatio malorum, journaling and reframing are not just theories, they're practices that lead to strength. This isn't just philosophy, it's practical psychology. It's how we build resilience, clarity, and contentment in a world that often gives us none of those things for free. Don't just watch this and move on. Pick one tool, practice it this week. And if you found this helpful, subscribe, share, and keep walking the path of inner mastery. The world needs less noise and more people who think clearly.